Identity crisis or lasting change? Which will it be? Your identity, my identity, is the key to lasting change, and yet it's the last thing to change. I know this well. For me as an athlete, I didn't always call myself an athlete. I thought, I'm working full time, I'm an analyst, I work out, I fit it in, I go to these competitions. And at one point I'm on a hike with a friend of mine who was actually a world ranked athlete. She said, how many national titles do you need to win before you'll call yourself an athlete? That was a wake up call for me. Why does it matter? Is it an ego thing? No. Your identity can help you. If you identify as an athlete, you wake up every day, you work out, you eat healthy, you act like an athlete. If you don't identify as an athlete, like I didn't, then I was constantly falling off the wagon and struggling against the identity that I was holding, which was, yeah, I just do that on the side, so what does it matter? In this video, I'm going to go through the 6 areas that you can look into to improve how you identify yourself. Number 1, imposter syndrome. Number 2, the mental box we build. Number 3, using cognitive behavioral therapy techniques on yourself to work on getting the identity that you really want. And Stoicism. Are there things that we can take from that philosophy to help us with our identity and jumping into the identity that we want? You are what you do. That's number 5. Are we what we do, or do we need to actually pull our identity and our thought about ourselves along with it? And finally, the shadow side of identity. If you don't work on your identity, what happens? All right, let's jump into it. Your identity and the imposter syndrome. Don't you think we all suffer from the imposter syndrome? I certainly do. Even when I was running the #1 fund in the world, people would say, oh, you're a tech guru. I'd say, no, don't say that. It's going to ruin everything. Why do we not want to jump into our success? I'm not arguing to get this big ego and run around like a peacock and say, I'm just the best that's ever been. Why do we lack confidence even when we have a lot of achievements? For me, it's that we don't know the future. What's going to be your next trade? What's going to be your next competition? You could totally mess it up. So where do we go from here? If we have this issue feeling like we're an imposter, that's not going to help our identity and help us feel security of knowing who we are. What do? Live in the present. Start thinking about the future. Now that can be fun, but it can also be worrying because we don't know if our next trade, if our next competition is going to be good. But what we do know is what we can achieve today, what we can do, the output instead of the outcome. So focus on the present to help you get over imposter syndrome. We live in the mental box we build. What do I mean by that? That derives our identity. So if I say I can't sell, I'm not good at marketing, I'm not good at public speaking, all of my actions will fall from that statement. And so I will do things that support this identity that I've built. And yet, is it true? Is any of it true? Every single day we wake up, we can learn. Scott Young's book, Ultra Learners, showed that. You can learn multiple languages, you can learn to sell, you can learn to dance, you can learn to sing. You may not be the top 1%. But anything you want to do, you can learn. This mental box may not be serving you. It certainly doesn't serve me. What can you do? Build big. What do I mean by that? Build a mental box that says you can. Build a box that says every day you wake up, if there's something lacking, go learn it. Take a course. Watch a free online video. The first step is looking at the box that you've built, questioning the walls and making it a whole lot bigger. CBT, what is that? Cognitive behavioral therapy. And how does it have to do with our identity? Cognitive behavioral therapy is one of many psychotherapies. It has been shown using functional MRIs to be one of the most effective in changing the wiring of our brain. So do you need to go to a therapist? That's up to you, and only you know you. A lot of these techniques of CBT can be used at home. When I'm just hanging around, sometimes I just start to worry about things, and often they're not in my control. And CBT says, look at something called the locus of control. This is in my control, or isn't it? What's in my control are my thoughts. Those thoughts then become feelings, emotions, and eventually result in actions and habits. CBT says what you can control is your thoughts. First, question your thoughts. Are they serving you? Aren't they serving you? And question them before they become emotions. Think about that. The first thing you think is, oh, he doesn't care about me. And the very next moment is when that becomes an emotion. The most effective way to use CBT at home is to question those thoughts and ask if they're really serving you. And if they aren't, get rid of them, add a new thought, add a conflicting thought to get rid of the one that's not serving you. This is the way to use CBT at home. Stoicism and your identity. Interestingly, Stoicism and cognitive behavioral therapy both rest on this idea of the locus of control. Control your inner world. Control what you can and let go what you can't. Control your output because you cannot control your outcome. But what if you're not a Stoic? That's okay. And maybe after this video, you'll want to look into it. Maybe it's something that will serve you. Maybe not. Either way, there are some principles from Stoicism that you can leverage to jump into the identity that you want, which will help you form the habits that you want to form. The idea behind Stoicism is knowledge. Knowledge is what the Stoics seek, to understand and not to have their titles, not to have their, quote, identity be CEO or grandmother. Those things can change based on what's happening externally in life. You're a CEO, then you get pulled out of your job. What is in our control is our knowledge and the ability to learn every single day. You can look at the identity you want and the knowledge you need in order to step into that identity. You can be in control of how you move towards the identity you want. The best ways to do it with a Stoic principle are to stay grounded and to stay in the present, focused on output and not outcome. If you've been enjoying this video so far, and I really hope you have, go ahead and click subscribe for more like this. Have you ever heard people say you are what you do? Is it really that simple to get a new identity just by doing new things? Yes and no. How do you form habits of doing new things? The best way is to do it in really small increments, 10 minutes at a time. That means 10 minutes of body weight exercise, a 10-minute walk, and anytime you have a craving, another 10-minute walk so that craving can pass. And so getting rid of bad habits and jumping into new good habits can be done 10 minutes at a time every single day. Consistency and lowering the barriers to that consistency is important. Now you're doing all of these positive things. Why doesn't your identity follow? Our identities are the last to change. And part of this is based on survival because we needed to keep one identity, to have one focus, to get our food, to survive, to find our shelter. If we're always navel gazing and changing our identity, that's actually against our survival. Now we're more civilized, and yet we still have those uncivilized parts of our brain. And so it's important that even as you change your behaviors, you continue to use mental tools like cognitive behavioral therapy on yourself or different philosophies on yourself to really reflect and give yourself positive feedback on your new identity that aligns with these new actions. Is there a shadow side to identity? Now, I don't mean the dark side of each of us. I'm staying away from that right now. The shadow side that if our identity doesn't catch up with our new actions, all of that hard work can get completely reversed. What do I mean by that? When I was working 80 to 100 hours a week as a professional tech investor, I would go down and compete with Olympians on the weekends. And I got as far as 9th in the 2005 World Cup trials in dressage. Then later at the age of 51, I won the North American Championships for bodybuilding for women overall. And that same weekend, which is a little bit crazy, I won the 100 and the 400 meter dash for my age group for the USA Masters Championship. And yet, later that year, I was on a long hike with a friend and saying, I'm not really an athlete, and she said, how many national championships do you need to win before you'll call yourself an athlete? Now, this is an extreme case, but this is partly imposter syndrome, and it's partly what are you willing to call yourself? If you're willing to call yourself what you want to step into, the behaviors you want to step into, it makes it so much easier. If I call myself an athlete, I wake up, I eat healthier, I go to bed earlier, because that's what athletes do. And so having this mental framework can really help you get into the physical habits that you want to, so your identity can serve you. Now that we're at the end, I'd love to know from you, what are you going to do about imposter syndrome? Are you going to build your mental box far bigger? Are you going to look into cognitive behavioral therapy at home? Maybe read up on some Stoic principles? Most important, who are you and who do you want to be? Can you start to form that identity so that it follows your changing actions? I'd love to know. I hope you like this video. Hit subscribe if you want to see more. And check out my other videos. To join the best conversations on your health, you can find me in these channels on social media.